do sometimes speak about dreams and visions, which I feel the Lord has, or I believe the Lord has given to me. Well, recently, a couple of weeks ago, I had a very vivid dream. And I believe this dream is indicative of what may happen in the future. And in the dream, I found myself walking along a road, and I had on my wrist some kind of identity band that was linked by Wi-Fi to the police. And I knew in the dream the reason for this was because I was a believer and I'd been making the gospel known. And so I had been arrested and then charged. But instead of sending me to prison, I had this white band on my left hand wrist. So I was tagged. And so the authorities knew where I would be. And in the dream, I was walking with my brother. And we were talking. And suddenly I said, I'm not going to have this on anymore. I don't need to wear this. And I took it off. And it began to bleep. And I knew it was sending a signal. So I somehow managed to get this device off my left wrist. And I flung it as far as I could into a forest, and it landed in some bushes. And I knew that they would be on my trail before long. They wouldn't be able to find me that easily because I didn't have this device on, this tracking device. But I knew that it wouldn't be long before they either somehow through social media posted my face or something on social media and says this criminal is let loose. And then in the dream I found myself going and staying overnight in a hostel in another town or village a long way off from where I'd begun. So it was a very simple dream, but very vivid. And I believe this can be indicative of the future. And that believers will be arrested, but not necessarily put in prison, but they will be tagged and on some kind of probation. And the authorities will be able to trace where they are going and their activities. But I believe the Lord gave me this because in the dream I was not afraid and realized I did not have to do everything the authorities wanted. And so I got rid of the tracking device and flung it away. But we are living in these kind of times, and it may not be long before this kind of thing happens. Now, something else I remember in the dream was that when I was tracked with this device, it was also linked to a robot. And the robot would be policing me. And this robot didn't look like a human robot necessarily. It was metallic and it was big. And I knew that it was capable of being able to capture people or harm people in a certain way. And this seemed to be what was happening. And that these robots would be able to quickly go and retrieve their prey. And so the tracking device was linked to a robot. And this robot will be able to follow me if I went out of a certain vicinity or a certain area where I was tagged into a certain zone. Now this may all sound very science fiction-like and futuristic, But we know now that they've made some quite advanced robots that are able to do acrobatics, able to hold guns and fight to an extent, and the army and so on has been very interested in these robots. Well, in this dream, this robot was attached to my tracking device, and it would know when I went out of the perimeter. I had to stay in a certain area, and I walked out of there. So of course, when I got rid of the tracking device from my left wrist and threw it into a bush, we then went a great distance further to another town or area or zone. And so they would not be able to track me. And that device would be in the bush sending a signal from that area. But we are not to fear when these things are happening. And I believe it's quite possible that this kind of thing could happen in the future. And true children of God, born again believers, will be classed as terrorists and criminals. And they will have tracking devices put on them if we allow them to do that. So basically, this is just what I wanted to bring to you on this video. Pray about it. You don't have to believe everything I say. These things have to be tested. But we do know we're living in now a time of a great deal of electronic surveillance, and this could happen.